Hey, what's up, Salt Strong family? This is Pat Ogletree, and in this video, I want to answer a question that we've been having in the community that is relating to how do you fish a marsh area or an area that has such a big tide drop. I'm fishing in South Carolina right now, and this is really close to a full moon, and we've got probably about a 6-foot tide drop today, and it can definitely get the water moving. So my first tip is going to be time your trips accordingly. So when you're looking at a tide cycle and you've got that 6-7 foot tide swing, what's going to happen is, say we're fishing an incoming. The first part of that incoming, it's going to have to build up a little while, so it doesn't automatically open up the floodgates and all the water comes in at once. What happens is you'll slowly build up, and then the current will come and get faster and faster and faster. And about the middle third of that tide cycle is when you're going to get the maximum amount of water flow, and that's when it's really hard to position yourself, and frankly it's hard for the fish to actually chase their bait, and sometimes if the water flow is enough, fish won't actually feed in the middle third of that tide cycle. So your best part of that tide cycle is going to be the very beginning third and the very end third. That's when the water flow is going to be the least, and you're going to be able to get on those fish a little bit better and position a little bit easier. Now, one of the things that I like to do is actually time my trips to where you're going to fish, say, the last third of an incoming, through the slack, and then the first third of the outgoing. That way you get the maximum amount of time in the water. So if you want to do a shorter trip, then you could do this. You could launch at a slack tide, fish whether you want to fish that outgoing or that incoming, and then when that water gets moving too much, then you can get back to the ramp. So I would recommend for you kayakers to actually start up current and then work your way back. Your boaters, it's not really going to matter that much, but it is a little bit easier for positioning if you do it that way. And the second tip that I want to give you, if at all possible, choose a wider body of water. The wider the body of water, the less speed that the water is going to flow. So in a creek system that I'm in right now, as you can see behind me, it's very narrow, and we've got that 6-foot tide swing. The water moves pretty fast through here. So if this was an open water, a wider water column, say it was a sound or even a bay, even though we have a 6-foot drop, that doesn't necessarily mean that the water is going to travel the same amount of speed. In these narrow channels, they definitely move a little bit faster. Try to fish the wider bodies, and the current's going to travel at a slower speed. And before I move on to the next tip, I want to talk about the tackle and the lures that I use to fish these marshlands. And when you're talking about the bottom of the tide and the very, very top of the tide, it's hard to beat an artificial shrimp. And one of the best shrimp imitations out there is the Power Prawn USA. This has been an excellent lure for me when fishing these situations. Now, how I like to rig them is on a Haas Helix hook. The original Power Prawn size, what we would call the original, which is our 4.3 inch, I like to use those on a 4/0 hook, and then the Power Prawn Juniors, I like to use those on a 3/0. Now, when the water starts moving, what I like to do is switch over to a paddle tail, because it's hard to fish an artificial shrimp when the water really gets to moving, and there's nothing better than a paddle tail for moving water, whether that be our 3.5 inch, the 2.0 series, or it could be the 5-inch in our Bomber series. Either one of these will work. Now, if the water is shallow, you can rig this on a weedless, like the Haas Helix hook, and that'll keep it from getting hung up in oysters. But if the water's deeper and it's moving really fast, then you might have to switch over to something like this, which is an open face jig head. This is our Haas Helix football jig, and this works good whenever the water is a little bit deeper. So when you get to that 4 foot and over range of that really, really fast moving water, this is typically your best option. But for more information on this, I recommend going to fishstrong.com, and while you're in there, just check out the reviews from all of these lures, and you'd be surprised to see at how many people are having great success by using these lures, and it'll be the first time that they use them. So check it out at fishstrong.com. And the third tip that I want to give you is when you're fishing out here, say you decide to fish the whole tide cycle, and you're going to fish that third that's going to be the strongest, the third of the tide cycle that's going to be the strongest. What I recommend is setting up in areas where you have a seam in your current, meaning that there's a break. When there's a bend in the river, typically on the back side of that bend, there's going to be an eddy or a current break. The current is going to go to the outside, and then you're going to have a little bit of water that is going to swirl around. Those not only are they easier places to position and fish, those are actually ambush places for predators to stack up. So not only do you have an easier spot to position your boat, you're also more likely to run across some predators because they're doing the same thing. They're trying to get out of that current flow. Now, earlier I had mentioned that you could actually fish through the tide cycles where you can get the last of an incoming fish slack and then the first of an outgoing. And, you know, a lot of times people say that, you know, you need that water movement, but in certain situations like this, especially in marshlands, when you have the top of an incoming tide, what'll happen is it will flood water into the back areas, and it'll be areas that the fish don't get a chance to normally get into. The only time that they can get to that area is during a high tide. So they'll move up in there and they'll feed even though the water is slack. You know, they'll get in there, they'll get the crabs that they normally can't get to, or even some shrimp that's getting flushed out. It's actually a great time to fish up in the back areas of those marshes. Now, same thing on the bottom end of a slack tide. So you've got a lower slack tide and it's flat low tide. Now, a lot of times you can catch fish right at the base of those drains. So as the creek mouths and the drains happen, usually there's a shelf that'll drop straight down that goes right into the river channel itself. Well, at the bottom of that shelf, you'll have a lot of fish, particularly flounder, that'll hang down there, and they're waiting for that current to start moving again, and they'll move back up into the creeks, but they'll be down there waiting. And you can bounce a shrimp down on the bottom like a power prawn or something like that, and you can catch a lot of flounder that way. So at the top of the high tide, you can push back into the marsh and you can go after your redfish. At the bottom of the tide, you can push down to the drains, fish for flounder at the bottom, and then when the current is moving, that's your best time to catch trout. They will be actively feeding on anything that's getting flushed out of those drains and those creek mouths. So definitely a easy way to get a slam when you're fishing the marsh. So I hope this helps you out in any way, and if you've got any questions, just put those down below. And as always, I appreciate you watching. Have a great day. I hope to see you out on the water soon. And if you're new to Salt Strong, just know that we are the best online fishing club in America, where we guarantee that you'll catch more fish in less time while saving money on all the tackle that you need to be successful, and you'll make friends fast, or it's free. For more information, go to saltstrong.com. And until then, we hope to see you in the insider community soon. Have a great day, and thanks for watching.